Korean MMORPGs are the best allegory of life. You wake up, you get your daily fix of boring chores, complete and progress in life, or stagnate as usual. Next, you get off your work, go back to your house and launch another simulator of working environment, which in MMORPG nomenclature means you go on a ride with the boys to get a kick of bigger numbers goes brrrr, so you can get an illusion of that you're getting further and further in life or game, even though in reality you're pretty much staying in the same position you did the other day, but with bigger numbers, which successfully brings your dopamine to somewhat acceptable levels. My requirements for the game I play are not really that high. As long as I can grind mindlessly for 6 hours while blasting bangers from my speakers, which are so good even the black vans standing outside my house are bumping, I'm fine with pretty much anything. I know those games are being made with a lot of unnecessary systems to prolong my game time and make my experience with the game bearable at best, as long as I don't swipe my credit card. Every MMORPG does that. It doesn't matter if it's made in Korea, Japan, USA, CAA, NASA or Mars. Most of the MMORPG developers know that those games are being played by 30-year-old boomers with a lot of disposable income, so they will put a lot of mundane stuff to do so we can skip it using our plastic rectangles with funny names and numbers engraved on them. So, after this all lengthy intro to MMORPG games in 2022, let's jump straight into Lost Ark. Lost Ark is a Korean MMORPG made by Smilegate, a company which brought to South Korea a lot of games. By a lot, I mean at least 3. One of them being Crossfire, one of the biggest FPS games worldwide, mainly played in Asian countries like China, Vietnam or Russia. 2 other notable games published by Smilegate are Epic 7, which is one of the most friendly free-to-play gacha games out there, and Soulworker, pretty much an old anime MMORPG which died in a Western market thanks to the terrible management by its publishers. Whoever played the game published by Gameforge knows it's going to be a beautiful pay-to-win dumpster fire. As you can see, compared to other companies which are publishing MMORPGs, Smilegate is pretty much an indie company which should barely function and shouldn't be able to pull off making one of the best MMORPGs on the market, but they did. My adventure with Lost Ark started the same way as for everyone else. My friends which I used to play with 10 years ago DM'd me about making a new guild on an NA server to play together, raid, PvP and all of this stuff. Since I didn't have a chance to play with them for the last 10 years, I was like, yeah, sure bros, let's do it! The thing is, all of them left before reaching tier 3, can't really blame them though, they are still playing WoW in 2022, which means they will most likely never leave the Bobby Kotick's maze. After all, once you play Warlaw for more than 2 expansions or you start listening to Drain Gang, your soul becomes irredeemable, and you are pretty much doomed to become a failure. A fairy. Since my first guild was dead, I jumped to another guild with some random fellow Americans which also left the game a month after, making me the GM of another dead guild, which right now I use to pump out all of the red dust into my characters to buy some bonus stuff from vendors. In regular MMOs, my adventure would be already over since I wouldn't be able to do anything solo. Meanwhile, in Lost Ark, I'm pretty much pugging all of the raids in game, collecting all of the collectibles like masterpieces or green Korean apples called Mokokos, while doing my daily and weekly chores and enjoying the mindless grind that the game is. At one point I'll have to jump to some other guild and search for some more fellow Americans to push all of the raid content and PvP, even though PvP in this game is an absolute stunfest and pay-to-win fiesta, outside 3 vs 3 arena game mode, which, by the way, is one of the most unbalanced and boring arena experiences I've ever had. Even League of Legends is more balanced, and Riot is not able to balance the game for the last 10 years, so I hope it tells you all you need to know to see how bad the PvP in Lost Ark is. The second, bigger part of the game is a gear progression system. It's a typical copy-pasted progression system from any other Korean MMORPG, requiring you to get lucky to progress or fail enough times to get your PT system going and get a 100% chance to enhance your piece of gear to the next level. The thing you see on the screen right now is a nightmare for most of the Lost Ark players. I failed over 40 times while having more than 6% chance to get my weapon up to 21, spending over 40k just because I was unlucky. Meanwhile, there are a lot of lucky skilled players who get their plus 25 weapon with 2% chance after 5 clicks. That's truly a Korean MMORPG experience. Since we've already talked about what the game is, let's talk about the real experience of the game, the drama and Amazon Games Studio. I won't talk about the streamers since most of them are nothing more than just a paid shills, which would say the game is something close to a second coming of a Jesus Christ, even though there is a lot of terrible stuff in the game. Amazon Games, also known as AGS, is in my opinion one of the worst gaming companies which has ever been on the market. Outside some mobile and Facebook games, they've pretty much made a game about their own TV series called The Grand Tour Game, which, let's say, is okay at best. Their second game outside multiple failed projects is a fairly known MMORPG called New World. New World is known to be the game which, due to its mismanagement and flawed design, has fallen off 6 months after its release from average 400,000 players a day to 20k during the peak hours. It's most likely the most spectacular failure of a video game, which by the way is sponsored by one of the richest people alive on planet Earth, Jeff Bezos. You know, the guy who is sending your mom boxes with some cheap stuff from China. The game is so dead, the only content for the players who are still trying to play this failure of a game is to observe this beautiful dumpster fire. And that's a pretty similar experience for everybody who plays Lost Ark. I'll give you a few examples. Back in the day, bots were pretty much a rampant problem in the game. There were more bots than actual players. Of course, Amazon tried to downplay the whole problem with forum posts saying they are monitoring the situation and looking very closely at this issue, which meant we can't do anything about it because Jeff didn't give us enough money to hire 2 or 3 guys to log in on every server in North Vern and ban all of the berserkers standing here and doing chaos dungeons for 24 hours a day. Once they've seen bots are outselling them in gold, they decided to finally put up a fight against the bots. After 2 months, they started to ban all of the bots, so the actual customers interested in spending their money to buy currency in-game would buy the gold from Mr. Bezos rather than Mr. Cheng, who back in the day owned a small bot farm of 150k totally real and legit players. But if there weren't any people interested in buying gold, there wouldn't be any actual bots in the game, right? The people who decided to buy the gold from Mr. Cheng not only bought it for a much better price than they could get it from Mr. Bezos, they also could do it without any problem or chance of getting banned at all. Few of my friends told me a lot of people on EU servers bought millions of gold, and the worst thing they got was a 3-day ban. Amazon didn't even take out the gold from the accounts of people who breached their TOS. Of course, we are talking about the time before the great cleansing they decided to do on June 15. After that, a huge, monumental player base of 870k totally legit players during the peak hours has shrunk to 250,000.
I can explain.
Since Amazon finally banned most of the bots and the people who did the RMT, some of them got banned forever, a lot of them got banned for a week, and guess what? A lot of them are still holding the bag of gold they got from Mr. Cheng. Good job, Mr. Bezos. Let's face it, Amazon can't deliver any promises, and every time they can screw something up, they will. Every time they released a roadmap, it was delayed, not fully delivered, or simply broken at the day of a release. The latest drama was about a patch which was supposed to get delivered mid-June and was delivered on the 1st of July, not only being late for 2 weeks but also broken for all of the people who are still using Windows 7. If you are a user of Windows 7 just like me, you weren't able to launch the game thanks to the missing audio DLL file, which is not available for Windows 7 users. We got a corrupted patch which we couldn't do anything about because some software guy from South Korea got the wrong impression that our version of a game is dedicated only for gaming rigs operating on Windows 10. It took them 2 days to get this stuff fixed, making us unable to access the game. And before some redditor jumps on me saying our version of a game is supposed to run on Windows 10 and it's my fault for running an unsupported operating system on my PC, let me make something clear. Every other version of the game runs perfectly fine on Windows 7. Both Russian and Korean versions require Windows 7 to work as intended. The only thing which made our version of the game requiring a Windows 10 is a geolocalization services plugin, which was not pre-installed in any version of Windows 7. Amazon wants people to have this little plugin just because they can't develop any game or make any business decisions without a lot of data showing how good of a slave enjoying their products you are. I'm still not using a Windows 10 just because most of the old and obscure games I like to play are not supported by Windows 10, and I refuse to downgrade my operating system just because some stupid redditor which goes into all of those funny fairy websites or Mongolian basket weaving forums is going to tell me some stories about cybersecurity and some other nerd stuff. By the way, the patch they brought to us was not even full. They forgot to include a new bi-weekly feature to refurbish old Tier 1 and Tier 2 foreman raids, to make them scale and provide bonus resources and cards for everyone capable of completing them, making us a step closer to a Korean version of the game, and we finally got it 3 weeks after the previous date they promised they will deliver. But since all of the people who are still left standing playing this game, or should I say are maced into the game, are pretty much indifferent to all of those broken promises. After all, MMORPG players are pretty much living on hopium, since the only good alternatives to Lost Ark are Final Fantasy XIV, which combat system is terrible, WoW, which once you get over raiding is pretty much done game, and BDO, which is basically Lost Ark but with worse graphics and more pay to win mechanics, but we'll talk about BDO in another video. That's all for today, folks. Take care and remember, we are living in the Jeff Bezos world.